In this video, we'll learn about JavaScript's built-in date objects. Dates can be tricky in any programming language, and JavaScript has its own quirks. Let's dive in. JavaScript represents dates as the number of milliseconds since midnight on January 1st, 1970. This is called the unique epoch. Let me show you an example of how you can create and represent the date. So what you see here, calling new date with no arguments, gives you the current date and time. Let me run it and show you the output. The output format depends on your environment, but it shows the full date, time, and time zone. There are different ways that you can construct a data object. So in the example that I just showed you, we called the date constructor without any argument. That gives you the current date and time. There are several options that you can provide various arguments to it. For example, you can provide the number of milliseconds since the epoch. You can provide year, month, day, hours, and so on, which probably is going to be more useful. You can even construct it from another date object. Let me show you an example of how this works. So here I'm saying create a date object for me, and this is actually a very large value. This is 10 to the power of 12, and that's the number of milliseconds since the unique epoch, and this is going to come out to some date. And here more specifically I'm saying that, you know, the year is 1961, the month is July, and let's look at the 4th of July. And so let's print out these values. Again, you can see that it created the correct the representation for the date. One thing to keep in mind is that July, I've used the value 6 for it, and that's because the months are 0 indexed in JavaScript. So January is 0, February is 1, and so on. So 6 is actually July, but when it's printed out, it's correctly printed out as 1961-07-04. All right, you can also create dates from a string. So you can provide a format similar to what it was printed out for you and have the date object to be reconstructed for you. So something like, let's say this example, right? And you can print it out. And in this case, it looks like it's basically printing out the same thing, but I'm going to show you soon how you can format this object, and we'll come back to this example and format it. But before we get there, let me show you some static functions on the date object. So the date object has several static methods. Some of them are very useful. For instance, if you want to get the time now, rather than instantiating new date, you can also call date.now. Also, you can try to call date.parse and give it a string, and it will try to parse that for you and convert it into a date object. So let's take a look at how this works. Well, actually, date parse will give you the milliseconds, and then you can pass that to a constructor, date constructor, and then you get the date object. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's also look at some helpful methods on the objects themselves, not static methods, but things like getters and setters. So there are a bunch of different getter methods to get like the year, the month, the hour, the minute. Let's take a look at one of these examples. So I'll get the date, and then you can get the full year. Let's take a look at it. So year comes out as 2026, month is 0 because it's January, right? So it goes from 0 to 11. And then when you say give me the date, it actually gives you like the day of that month. So that's going to come out 15. And get hours, it gives you the hour value between 1 to 24. Okay, so let's take a look at some setter methods. So I can create a date object, and then I can overwrite its values. So I can set the year, set the month, and again, don't forget month is 0 index, and set the date. And so here's how it looks like. All right, now let's get to formatting dates, because this is not a very user-friendly way of representing dates. So let's take a look at a bunch of different ways that we can format dates. Let's look at the first one. So let me actually run this and then explain various different formats. So the toISO string gives you the standard ISO format, which is the one that has been printed for you so far. So that's sort of how it is standardized. The toDate string will give you a date that is more human readable, so to speak. So it's giving me it's Thursday, January 15, 2026. ToTime string, again, similar story. It gives me a value that is more human readable. So it's telling me it's 11 past 8 basically, and it's telling me that I'm in Eastern Standard Time Zone. This one is very helpful and commonly used. So toLocale string, and then you pass an argument to it, and that argument defines what time use and like what language to use. And so you can fully customize this to like print it in a different language based on a convention of like a different country, how they're presenting. So English USA, you see that's the way we typically express time and date here. So 15th of January 2026, and it's 11 past 8 p.m. All right, so if we were to, like, as I told you, go back to that example where I have given it a date like this, and it printed basically the same thing back to me. You can see now if I were to change this to locale string and give it like en US and run this, now it's going to print this in a friendlier format compared to the string that I provided to construct the date object. All right, so we covered the date object. I showed you how to construct dates from milliseconds, from different components of a date, or even strings. You've seen how to use various static methods like date.now and date.parse. These are helpful for reading and modifying dates, and you can also use various getters and setters operation. And particularly, there are many formatting operations that help you to format a date object to however way you desire to present it to the users. These formatting objects, they also take different parameters that further allow you to customize a data object. So perhaps the biggest gotcha here is to keep in mind that months, for whatever reason, are zero indexed in JavaScript.